Karen Matthews walked into Judge Judy's courtroom like she owned the place. Her designer handbag swinging from her shoulder, her heels clicking against the polished floor with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. The courtroom was packed, standing room only, the gallery filled with people who'd waited hours just to witness justice in action. The American flag hung behind the bench, the seal of the court gleaming under the fluorescent lights, and Judge Judy sat there reading glasses perched on her nose, flipping through case files with the precision of a woman who'd seen every trick in the book. The air was thick with anticipation, that electric hum you feel right before something big is about to go down. Karen didn't stand when the bailiff called the court to order. She didn't nod respectfully. She didn't even make eye contact with the judge. Instead, she plopped down in her chair, crossed her arms, and let out a sigh loud enough for the microphones to catch. The plaintiff, a middle-aged woman named Sandra, sat across from her, hands folded, eyes nervous but hopeful. She'd been fighting this battle for months, trying to get back the $5,000 Karen owed her. Money that was supposed to go toward a joint business venture that Karen had sabotaged and walked away from. But this wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about principle. About holding someone accountable who'd spent her whole life skating by on entitlement and excuses. Judge Judy looked up from her papers, her sharp eyes landing on Karen, and you could feel the temperature in the room drop. "Stand up," the judge said, her voice calm but carrying the weight of decades on the bench. Karen glanced at her nails. "I don't think I need to," the gallery gasped. The bailiff's hand moved instinctively toward Karen, ready to intervene. Judge Judy removed her glasses slowly, folding them with deliberate care, and set them on the bench. Her eyes never left Karen's face. "You don't think you need to?" she repeated, her tone so quiet it was almost a whisper. That's when everyone in that courtroom knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary case. This was about to be a masterclass in what happens when entitlement meets accountability. And Karen had no idea she'd just walked into the fight of her life. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The case that brought Karen Matthews and Sandra Chen to Judge Judy's courtroom had been brewing for nearly a year. A toxic mix of broken promises, stolen money, and the kind of betrayal that happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness. Sandra had met Karen at a local business networking event. One of those weekend seminars where entrepreneurs pitch ideas over bad coffee and stale pastries. Karen had been all charm back then, talking about her vision for a boutique online store selling handmade jewelry. How she had the contacts, the marketing expertise, the social media following. All she needed was a partner with capital and operational skills. Sandra, who'd spent 15 years managing inventory for a major retailer before being laid off, saw an opportunity. She had severance money burning a hole in her savings account, and a dream of being her own boss. So she wrote Karen a check for $5,000, their agreed-upon seed investment, with a handshake deal that they'd split profits 50-50 once the store launched. That was 10 months ago, and Sandra hadn't seen a dime, a product sample, or even a basic business plan since. What she had seen was Karen's Instagram feed filled with luxury brunches, designer shopping hauls, and weekend getaways to wine country, all funded by what Sandra suspected was her investment money. When Sandra started asking questions, Karen got defensive. When Sandra demanded receipts, Karen got hostile. When Sandra threatened legal action, Karen laughed and said, "Good luck proving anything. We didn't even have a contract." That's where Karen made her first critical mistake. She underestimated two things: Sandra's determination and the fact that text messages, Venmo receipts, and email threads constitute evidence in the eyes of the law. Sandra had everything. Screenshots of Karen promising to have the website up in 30 days, records of the $5,000 transfer with jewelry business partnership investment in the memo line, and messages where Karen admitted she'd borrowed some of the funds for personal expenses, but would totally pay it back. Armed with this evidence, Sandra filed in small claims court, but Karen ignored the summons. She ignored the follow-up notices. She ignored the default judgment that went against her. That's when Sandra's lawyer suggested something different. Judge Judy's show. The cases were binding arbitration. The show paid the judgment if you lost, and Karen's type, the entitled, the overconfident, the delusional, they rarely said no to being on television. Karen took the bait immediately, probably thinking she could charm her way out of it, or that daytime TV court wasn't real court, or that she could somehow spin the narrative in her favor. What Karen didn't understand, what thousands of defendants before her had learned the hard way, was that Judge Judy Sheindlin wasn't playing games. Born Judith Susan Blum in Brooklyn, she'd spent 16 years as a family court prosecutor in New York before becoming a judge, handling cases that would break most people's spirits. Kids caught in nightmares of abuse and neglect, parents who'd lost their way, systems that failed the vulnerable, She developed a philosophy in those years. Cut through the nonsense, get to the truth, and deliver justice swiftly, because delayed justice isn't justice at all. When she launched her television show in 1996, she brought that same energy, that same refusal to tolerate lies, excuses, or disrespect. Her courtroom had rules, simple ones that any functioning adult should be able to follow. Don't interrupt, don't lie, don't waste her time, and above all, show respect for the process, even if you disagree with the outcome. She'd built a career on holding people accountable, on looking entitled defendants in the eye and dismantling their excuses with surgical precision. Her catchphrases had become cultural touchstones. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Beauty fades. Dumb is forever. If it doesn't make sense, it's not true. But beneath the sharp tongue and the no-nonsense demeanor was something deeper, a genuine belief that most people know right from wrong. They just need someone to enforce it. Karen was about to get that enforcement whether she wanted it or not. The stakes in this case weren't just about $5,000, though that money mattered to Sandra, who was still rebuilding her finances. This was about something bigger, about whether people like Karen could go through life taking advantage of others without consequence, whether charm and confidence could substitute for character and integrity. Sandra sat in that courtroom representing every person who'd been scammed by a friend, every entrepreneur who'd been burned by a partner, every trusting soul who'd learned too late that not everyone operates with the same moral compass. And Judge Judy? Well, she'd seen 1,000 Karens walk through her courtroom doors, each one thinking they were special, that the rules didn't apply to them, that they could talk their way out of anything. She'd developed a sixth sense for spotting them within seconds, the way they carried themselves, the dismissive body language, the barely concealed contempt for authority. When Karen refused to stand, Judge Judy knew exactly what she was dealing with, and her years of experience had taught her that some people only learn through consequences, swift and unmistakable. Judge Judy's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Ms. Chin, tell me what happened. Sandra leaned forward, her hands trembling slightly as she pulled out a folder stuffed with printed documents. Your Honor, I gave Ms. Matthews $5,000 last January for a business partnership. She promised we'd launch an online jewelry store together within 60 days. I have the Venmo transfer right here, the messages where she confirmed receiving the money, and emails where she outlined our partnership. She slid the evidence across to the bailiff, who delivered it to the bench. Judge Judy flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable, nodding occasionally as she scanned text message screenshots and payment receipts. Did you ever see any product? Any website? Any business activity whatsoever? Sandra shook her head, her voice cracking slightly. Nothing, Your Honor. When I asked for updates, she kept making excuses. Then she stopped responding entirely. When I saw her posting on Instagram about expensive dinners and shopping trips, I realized she'd spent my money on herself. Judge Judy set the papers down and turned her attention to Karen, who was examining her manicure like she was in a spa waiting room, not a courtroom. Ms. Matthews, you took this woman's $5,000 and did what with it exactly? Karen looked up slowly, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Before Judge Judy could finish her question, Karen held up her hand like a traffic cop stopping cars. Actually, I'm going to stop you right there. The courtroom went dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. Judge Judy's eyebrow arched so high it nearly reached her hairline. Excuse me? Karen reached into her oversized handbag and pulled out a crumpled stack of papers, printouts from what looked like conspiracy theory websites and sovereign citizen forums, highlighted in neon yellow and pink. I've done my research and I know my rights. Karen stood up without being asked, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and held her stack of papers like they were sacred scrolls containing hidden truths. I don't recognize this court's authority over me, she announced, her voice ringing with misplaced confidence. The gallery erupted in whispers and gasps. Sandra's mouth fell open. The bailiff took 2 steps closer, his expression shifting from professional neutrality to, "Are you seriously doing this right now?" Judge Judy sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the bench, her face a mask of dangerous calm. When she got quiet like this, veterans of her courtroom knew it was the equivalent of a hurricane gathering strength before landfall. You don't recognize this court, Judge Judy repeated slowly, each word measured and deliberate. That's correct, Karen said, flipping through her papers with theatrical flair. According to the Uniform Commercial Code and my status as a sovereign citizen, I'm not subject to corporate admiralty law. This court operates under maritime jurisdiction, which requires my consent, and I do not consent. I'm a living woman traveling upon the land, not a corporate entity, and therefore you have no jurisdiction over me. She smiled like she'd just delivered a closing argument worthy of Clarence Darrow. Judge Judy removed her glasses again, this time setting them down with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a gavel strike. Did you sign the agreement to appear on this show? She asked, her voice dropping to that deadly quiet register. Under duress, Karen shot back, reading from her papers. Any contract signed under duress is null and void under common law, which supersedes your statutory corporate regulations. Judge Judy leaned forward, her eyes locked on Karen like a laser sight. Did someone put a gun to your head? Threaten your family? Force you physically to sign? Karen hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Well, no, but the economic system is a form of coercion that— Stop talking, Judge Judy commanded, and the authority in those two words could have stopped traffic on a busy freeway. Karen's mouth snapped shut, though her eyes blazed with indignation. Let me explain something to you, since you apparently slept through civics class, Judge Judy continued, her voice rising now, each word hitting like a hammer. You signed a binding arbitration agreement. You appeared here voluntarily because you thought you could outsmart everyone in this room. You cashed the appearance fee check, which means you acknowledged this court's legitimacy. You can't take the money and then claim you don't recognize the process. That's not how any of this works. Karen's face flushed red, and she made her second catastrophic mistake. She pointed her finger directly at Judge Judy. You work for me, the people. I am the living beneficiary of the public trust, and you are an administrator who serves at my pleasure. I can dismiss you at any time. The courtroom went so silent you could hear the air conditioning humming. Sandra covered her mouth, her eyes wide with second-hand embarrassment. Even the bailiff looked stunned, like he couldn't quite believe what he was witnessing. Judge Judy stood up, her 5-foot frame somehow filling the entire courtroom with presence. She stood so rarely during cases that when she did, it meant something seismic was about to happen. Do you know where you are? She asked, her voice cold as December steel. Karen lifted her chin defiantly. I'm in a fake court that has no legal standing over a sovereign individual. Judge Judy picked up her gavel, and for a moment the entire room held its breath. You're about to find out exactly how real this court is, and I promise you're not going to like it. Judge Judy's gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $5,000. Karen's smug expression evaporated instantly, replaced by shock and disbelief. Wait, what? You can't just— I absolutely can, and I just did, Judge Judy said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Furthermore, for wasting this court's time with your sovereign citizen nonsense, I'm awarding Ms. Chen an additional $2,500 for emotional distress and the time she spent chasing you for money that was rightfully hers from day one. Sandra's hands flew to her face, tears welling in her eyes. $7,500, more than she'd even asked for. Justice wasn't just served. It was delivered with interest. Karen's face turned crimson, her carefully maintained composure crumbling like a sandcastle hit by a wave. This is illegal. I'm going to report you to— Judge Judy held up one finger, silencing her instantly. Report me to whoever you want. The Bar Association has my number, but let me educate you on something since you clearly need it. She leaned forward, her eyes boring into Karen with an intensity that made the defendant take an involuntary step backward. When you walked into this courtroom, you signed an arbitration agreement. That's a legally binding contract that you entered into voluntarily. Despite your ridiculous claims of duress, that agreement states that my decision is final and binding. There is no appeal. There is no higher court you can run to. This is done. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her prepared speeches and printed conspiracy theories utterly useless against the brick wall of legal reality. You stole that woman's money, Judge Judy continued, her voice rising with righteous anger. You spent it on yourself while she struggled. You ignored her calls, dismissed her concerns, and then had the audacity to come into my courtroom with your fake legal theories, thinking you could intimidate me. I've been practicing law since before you were born. I've seen every con, every scheme, every pathetic excuse. And yours doesn't even crack the top 100 for originality. The gallery was rivaling every word, some nodding in agreement, others leaning forward so they wouldn't miss a syllable of this judicial takedown. Your sovereign citizen arguments have a 0% success rate in actual courts, Judge Judy said, her tone shifting to something almost educational, like a professor explaining basic arithmetic to a struggling student. 0, not low, not unlikely, 0. Because they're based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how law works. You can't just opt out of society while enjoying all its benefits. You can't use the roads, the infrastructure, the legal protections, and then claim you're not subject to the rules. That's not freedom. That's freeloading. She picked up her papers and tapped them against the bench to straighten them, a gesture of finality. Bailiff, escort Ms. Matthews out of my courtroom. We're done here. Karen found her voice one last time, shrill and desperate. You haven't heard the last of this. I know people, I have connections, Goodbye, Judge Judy said, waving her hand dismissively. Enjoy paying that judgment. The bailiff's hand was gentle but firm on Karen's elbow as he guided her toward the courtroom doors, her designer heels stumbling slightly as she tried to maintain some shred of dignity. The cameras caught every moment, her face twisted in fury and disbelief, her mouth still moving with protest no one was listening to anymore. Behind her, Sandra stood at the plaintiff's table, wiping tears from her cheeks, her shoulders shaking with relief that felt like it was releasing months of pent-up frustration and worry. Judge Judy stepped down from the bench, something she rarely did, and walked over to Sandra with an expression that had softened considerably. "You did the right thing bringing this here," she said quietly, her voice stripped of the courtroom thunder, replaced with genuine warmth. "Don't ever let people like her make you afraid to stand up for yourself." Sandra nodded, unable to form words, and Judge Judy gave her shoulder a brief squeeze before returning to her chambers. Within hours of the episode taping, the clip had already started making its rounds online. Someone in the gallery had tweeted about it immediately after walking out, and the internet did what the internet does best. It turned Karen's meltdown into a viral sensation. The video racked up millions of views in the first 48 hours. "I don't recognize this court" became an instant meme, with people photoshopping Karen's face onto everything from parking tickets to restaurant bills. The comment section was merciless but therapeutic for everyone who'd ever dealt with someone like her. "Judge Judy just gave a masterclass in shutting down entitlement," one comment read with 50,000 likes. "The way she stood up, you knew it was over," another said. Karen really thought sovereign citizen copy pasta from Facebook would work in actual court. The legal community had a field day with it too. Law professors started using the clip in their classes as an example of what not to do. How misunderstanding legal concepts doesn't create loopholes, it creates embarrassment. A constitutional law professor at Georgetown tweeted, "Every semester I have at least one student who discovers sovereign citizen theories online. From now on I'm just showing them this clip." For Karen, the consequences extended far beyond the courtroom. The show's production company confirmed that the $7,500 judgment would be paid out of her appearance fee and the show's insurance fund, meaning Sandra would actually see her money, unlike the months Karen had spent dodging her. But Karen's real payment came in the form of her reputation being shredded across every social media platform. Her Instagram, once carefully curated with aesthetic brunch photos and inspirational quotes about being a boss babe, was flooded with comments. "How's that sovereign citizen defense working out for you? Maybe spend less on mimosas and more on paying your debts. Judge Judy owned you and we all watched." She tried to control the narrative, posting a long caption about how she was the victim of a corrupt system, how Judge Judy had violated her rights, how people didn't understand the legal principles she was citing. The post got ratioed so hard she deleted it within an hour, but not before screenshots lived forever in the digital archive of bad takes. Her business networking contacts started distancing themselves. The co-working space where she'd met Sandra quietly suggested she might be more comfortable working elsewhere. A local business blog that had once featured her in a 30 under 30 entrepreneurs to watch article issued a retraction. Meanwhile, Sandra used her settlement money exactly as she'd planned, launching her own modest online jewelry business, this time as the sole owner. She sent Judge Judy a handwritten thank you note and a pair of custom earrings, which the judge's assistant confirmed she received with appreciation. The case became one of those legendary Judge Judy moments that people reference years later, right up there with the dog knows its owner case and "you're going to be on the street with your belongings" ruling. It was a reminder that in Judge Judy's courtroom, your confidence level doesn't matter if you don't have the law on your side, and your papers full of internet legal theories won't protect you from the consequences of your own actions. 3 months after the courtroom clash, Sandra's jewelry business was thriving in its own small way. Not the empire Karen had promised, but something real, something built on actual work instead of borrowed money and empty promises. She'd named it Second Chance Designs, a quiet nod to the justice that had given her the resources to start over. Karen, according to her increasingly sparse social media presence, had moved to another city, presumably to escape the digital footprint of her humiliation. She never posted about sovereign citizenship again. Judge Judy returned to her bench the very next case, business as usual. Because for her this wasn't extraordinary, it was Tuesday. Another entitled defendant, another swift dose of accountability, another reminder that the courtroom is the great equalizer where your attitude matters far less than the facts. The lessons from this case echo far beyond one woman's failed attempt to outsmart the legal system. First and foremost, respect for institutions matters. Not blind obedience, but basic recognition that society functions on agreed-upon rules. You can't cherry-pick which laws apply to you while demanding the protection of others. The sovereign citizen movement has a perfect track record. Perfect failure. These pseudo-legal arguments have never worked, not once, not ever, because they're based on fantasy, not jurisprudence. Believing something doesn't make it true. And confidence without knowledge is just arrogance waiting to be humbled. Second, accountability is the antidote to entitlement. Karen had probably spent years getting away with behavior like this, charming her way out of consequences, moving on before anyone could pin her down. Judge Judy was the immovable object that stopped her unstoppable ego, and the collision was spectacular. When people face real consequences swiftly and publicly, it sends a message that resonates far beyond the individual case. Third, standing up for yourself matters. Sandra could have walked away, could have written off the $5,000 as an expensive lesson, could have let Karen win through sheer exhaustion. Instead, she fought, she documented, she persevered, and she won. That victory wasn't just about money, it was about refusing to be a victim, about insisting that people be held to their word. Judge Judy built her career on a simple philosophy. Say what you mean what you say, and don't waste anyone's time. In a world that often rewards the loudest voice rather than the most honest one, her courtroom remains a place where truth matters more than performance, where preparation beats pretension, and where trying to game the system gets you exactly nowhere. Karen learned that lesson the hard way, in front of millions of viewers, and the beautiful irony is that she volunteered for it. She walked into that courtroom thinking she was smarter than everyone else, and she walked out as a cautionary tale about what happens when entitlement meets expertise. For anyone watching, the message is crystal clear. Respect the process, honor your commitments, and understand that no amount of internet research will substitute for actual integrity. Because sooner or later we all face our own Judge Judy moment, that point where our excuses run out and we have to answer for our choices. The only question is whether we'll do it with dignity, or become another viral video showing exactly what not to do. Don't let what you build, whether it's your reputation, your relationships, or your word, drift into something unrecognizable. Show up with honesty, own your mistakes, and remember that in any courtroom, any boardroom, any room where accountability matters, the truth has a way of winning, and no amount of fake legal documents can change that fundamental fact.